Billionaire witnessed black teacher on floor with baby, shocking truth revealed at daycare. In a scene that seemed ripped from the pages of a heart-stopping thriller, billionaire investor Max Harrington walked into the little learner's daycare, where shadows danced under the fluorescent lights. The air was thick with anxiety, echoing the distant shouts of toddlers, unaware of the chaos about to ensue. His crisp suit contrasted sharply with the chaos around him. Then he saw it, a young black teacher, Ms. Michelle, sprawled out on the floor, her face twisted in pain. The lump in his throat grew as he caught sight of the tiny infant only days old nestled in her arms. There was something almost surreal about the moment. Birds chirped outside, oblivious to the crisis unfolding within the beige walls, but inside, the atmosphere felt electric. The chilling gaze of onlookers burned into Max's back as he rushed over, pulse racing. What had happened? Was she okay? Ms. Michelle's chest rose and fell in jerky motions, a rhythmic gasp that sent jagged waves of fear crashing through everyone who witnessed it. The neighboring parents exchanged hushed whispers, their eyes wide, filling with dread. Someone yelled for 911, the urgency slicing through the tension like a knife. But that wasn't all. As paramedics arrived, something strange drifted through the daycare. A shadow cast over the room, and it wasn't just from the looming figures of the first responders. Max noticed a bizarre symbol etched into the corner of the room, half hidden beneath a worn-out rug. Was it a sign or a warning? The questions piled up, squeezing his chest harder than ever. How could a simple day at daycare spiral into such madness? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the paramedics tended to Ms. Michelle, the air filled with her labored breaths, causing everyone watching to feel a tightening around their hearts. What hidden truths were engulfed in her frail body? A single tear rolled down her cheek. The sight shattered Max. It was like seeing hope extinguished. And then, beneath it all, there was that symbol again gleaming under the harsh lights, calling out for attention. Questions filled the space. What was happening here? What was that mark, and why did it feel like it held the key to everything? Suddenly, as the tension reached its boiling point, Ms. Michelle whispered something just above a breath, barely audible yet laced with urgency. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Max leaned closer, straining to catch every word Ms. Michelle spoke. Her eyes were filled with fear and desperation, swirling depths that seemed to echo an unspoken truth. The paramedics worked around them, focused yet visibly anxious, their motions swift but careful. The room felt charged, as if they were all caught in a storm of confusion. What wasn't he supposed to be like this? Max asked, his voice barely above a whisper, afraid to shatter the fragile moment. Ms. Michelle seemed to gather every ounce of strength before responding, her brow furrowing. The baby, it's not just a baby. They're coming for us. Max's heart raced as he processed her words. Who was coming? What was she talking about? The shadows in the room seemed deeper, the air more suffocating. Questions tumbled in his mind as he quickly glanced around, searching the faces of the parents and staff. Everyone looked concerned, yet no one seemed to fully grasp the weight of her warning. "Ma'am, can you tell us what happened?" One of the paramedics suddenly asked, kneeling beside Ms. Michelle, flicking on a flashlight, illuminating her face. He was looking for signs of consciousness, but all Max could think about was the strange symbol he had seen. The rugged outline seemed to pulse, almost alive, within the chaotic backdrop. Before Ms. Michelle could formulate an answer, a loud crash echoed from the back of the daycare. Panic erupted in an instant. Parents screamed, children cried. Max instinctively turned, bracing himself. Was the chaos outside finally spilling into their fragile sanctuary? "Stay here!" he shouted, his voice sharp as he sprinted towards the source of the noise. He squeezed through the throng of panicked adults, dodging tiny bodies weaving between their legs. When he reached the playroom, his breath caught in his throat. A group of masked figures stood near the back, their movements precise and menacing. They were dressed in dark clothing, shadows merging together, and at their feet lay something that sent chills racing down Max's spine, a small, ominous box adorned with the same symbol. "What the hell?" he muttered, his mind racing with horrifying possibilities. The world outside seemed to dissolve, nothing mattered more than those figures and what they represented. Suddenly, one of the masked individuals turned sharply, their eyes glinting with an unnerving intensity. Max felt paralyzed, a cold wave of fear washing over him. He was torn between rushing back to check on Ms. Michelle and confronting this new threat. "Get the kids out!" someone shouted from behind him. The urgency reverberated through the air, igniting the dread. Max's instincts kicked in, urging him to act. But in that split second, he caught a glimpse of the box once more. Could it possibly hold the answers he sought? Or was it a trap, waiting for someone naive enough to free its contents? With a pounding heart, he made his choice. Just as he took a step forward, a deafening sound shattered the air. The daycare erupted into chaos, screams piercing the room again. What happened next would change everything. Max knew he had to figure out the connection between the enigma of the baby, the symbol, and the masked figures before time ran out. But what if the truth was darker than he could possibly imagine? The air thickened with dread as Max glanced back at the chaos unfolding behind him. People were shoving past each other, their eyes wide with terror. But the masked figures loomed closer, their presence demanding attention. They moved with an eerie synchronicity that made Max's skin crawl. "Get the kids out," he shouted again, as he tried to push through the throng of panicked parents. But his voice felt as if it was swallowed by the whirlpool of chaos. He needed to make sense of the situation. The box. The warning from Ms. Michelle. What was it that connected them? He studied the masked figures. They seemed unfazed by the panic around them. In fact, they were eyeing the children. Max's heart dropped. Were they after the infant? Were they linked to whatever sinister force had brought chaos to his world? Heart pounding, Max took a step back, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. In the background, he could hear screaming, the distortion of cries echoing in his ears. "This can't be happening," he muttered under his breath. He had to act. He had to change the game. As the paramedics struggled to regain control, one of the figures suddenly lunged towards the box. Time slowed for Max as he watched. They reached down, their black-gloved hand brushing against the ancient symbol etched into the wood. "No!" Max shouted, charging forward. But there was a primal instinct in the masked figure's eyes, as if they were powered by something dark and ancient. Just then, the box popped open with a sharp snap, releasing a bright, otherworldly glow. The light seemed to pulse and throb like a heartbeat. Max's breath hitched. It was as if the universe was aligning in that very moment. From the box, a low hum filled the room, vibrating through Max's chest. The noise pierced the chaos, forcing everyone to freeze. Even the children ceased their crying, entranced by whatever force emanated from that small container. "Run!" someone screamed from the crowd, snapping Max from his trance. Instinctively, he turned, searching for the nearest exit. But before he could make a move, a series of blinding flashes erupted from the box, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that danced across the room. It was then that Max noticed them, the other children, their faces illuminated by the strange light. Their eyes widened as if awakening to something beyond their comprehension. Realization washed over him, it wasn't just the masked figures creating fear. The sudden appearance of the box and its glow was changing the atmosphere. "What is happening?" he gasped, eyes darting around. A deep, rumbling voice broke through the eerie silence. "What has been hidden will unravel and the truth shall emerge," it said, echoing around the daycare. The words felt alive, charged with energy and malice. Dark shadows began to ripple along the walls, creatures stirring from the depths of the unknown. Panic surged anew, but Max felt oddly drawn to the light, to the truth behind it. He could see Ms. Michelle in the corner, still struggling with the paramedics. Her eyes locked onto his with a desperate plea, urging him to comprehend the gravity of this moment. Things were about to escalate. He had to understand what was happening. "Max!" Someone hollered, shaking him from his thoughts. But he kept his gaze fixed on the box. He felt the urgency rev up within him, a storm of emotion. What if confronting this truth meant facing worse horrors than he could ever imagine? With a resolve born from fear, he took a step toward the glow, ready to uncover the chilling reality awaiting him. But would he have what it takes to survive the revelations that were about to unfold? Max stepped closer, heart racing as the glow from the box pulsated like a heartbeat, drawing him in with an inexplicable force. The kaleidoscope of colors danced wildly across the faces of the children, illuminating their wide eyes in a way that made them seem almost divine. Yet, at that moment, they looked more like lambs to the slaughter, innocent souls caught in a storm. "Max, please." Ms. Michelle's voice pierced through the din. He turned and saw her desperation, the paramedics finally making a breakthrough to her sides. There was a tear sliding down her cheek, a look of pure fear etched into her features. "You have to protect them." He needed to choose. Confront the darkness the box had unleashed or retreat into the fleeting safety of ignorance. Max's instincts screamed that this was bigger than just a daycare and more than he could ever fathom. The masked figures were the key, their intentions cloaked in mystery but undeniably sinister. Suddenly, the voice echoed again, louder, reverberating through Max's very core. "What has been hidden will unravel." It felt like a threat wrapped in a riddle. He could see it now. The power emanating from that box was no ordinary magic. It felt ancient, primordial. What truths would it reveal? What horrors would emerge? Shadows shifted violently, swirling like angry smoke from a fire, stretching toward the box and the children. One of the masked figures extended a hand toward the light, and the entire room gasped as the shadows warped. The walls seemed to pulse, and the light fluctuated with their movements. Max was rooted in place, the air thickening around him until it felt like he was breathing in shards of glass. "Get back!" Someone shouted, and Max's attention shifted. A brown-haired child, no older than 5, stumbled towards the box, entranced by its allure. "No!" Max screamed as he bounded forward, fueled by instinct. He didn't know what was coming, but he refused to let another child get swept into the chaos. In a split second, he was by the child's side, snatching her tiny hand. But as he turned, the masked figures advanced, and the air crackled. Their movements were erratic, almost alive, infused with the same energy that emanated from the box. It was then that Max understood the figures weren't mere agents of terror, they were conduits, drawn to the power that dwelled within. "Join us!" One of them hissed, their eyes ablaze behind the mask. The voice was hypnotic, like a siren-esque call, and for a heartbeat, the children swayed, influenced by the rhythmic pulses from the box. A chilling instinct kicked in. This was no mere attraction, it was a beckoning. "No!" Max yelled, fighting the pull. He felt the grip of the child's hand tightening in response, the innocent fear emanating from her being. "We have to go." But in that moment of defiance, the light from the box flared. It ignited the room, and shadows leaped forth with a violent energy, swirling and spiraling toward the panic-stricken mass. A knee-jerk reaction echoed as if time had stopped, and then an explosion of sound rocked the daycare, a force that blew back chairs and sent the parents stumbling. Glass shattered, screams erupted anew, and the blinding light swallowed everything in its wake. Max shielded the girl, feeling an overwhelming surge of energy rush through him, a communion with something truly otherworldly. As the chaotic storm settled, Max stood, eyes wide. The air felt heavy with a newfound tension, the fabric of reality trembling as he processed the fragmented scene around him. What had he unleashed? What truths were lurking just beyond those shadows? Would he be prepared for the answers that awaited him? Or had he just ignited something that could never be extinguished? The room was a cacophony, screams blended with the crunch of shattered glass and the raw, frantic breaths of parents trying to comprehend the chaos that had just erupted. Max tightened his grip on the girl's small hand, his heart thundering in his chest as he scanned the room, dazed by the blinding aftershocks of light. Around him, the walls still pulsed like a living entity, emanating a low hum that vibrated through his bones. Shadows writhed at the corners of his vision, flickering like half-formed nightmares. Emotion twisted within him: fear, anger, the primal urge to protect. Yet, an unsettling curiosity nudged him. What power lay hidden within that box? Max! Ms. Michelle's voice cut through the haze, desperate and urgent. Get the children out. They're all in danger. She stumbled toward him, her face pale, fear radiating from her like heat. Her focus darted to the box, still glowing ominously. He hesitated. The shadows had intensified, drawn to the box as if it were a magnet. The masked figures, now encircling it, swayed like puppets on strings, caught in a rhythm only they could hear. It felt like a trance, and he knew the children were teetering on the edge of something unfathomable, caught between innocence and the monstrous reality of what the box offered. Please, Max. Ms. Michelle begged again, and the urgency in her voice jolted him into action. He gestured for the children to follow him. This way. Stay close. They moved, small bodies weaving through the chaos, eyes wide with fright. The air crackled with tension, and each child's small gasp sent a stab of dread through him. They were so innocent, so fragile. He felt responsible for them all, and yet the shadows loomed like dark sentinels, watching every step. But just then, one of the masked figures turned toward him, its eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. You cannot escape what you have unleashed. It hissed, voice cold and filled with venom. You will join us. Max pressed the girl against him and pushed forward, adrenaline pushing away the creeping, overwhelming sense of despair. Run! He shouted, the command layering over the voices of terror that echoed in the room. Just as they neared the exit, the air thickened again, a suffocating weight that pulled at their very souls. Shadows lashed out like tendrils, desperate to ensnare the fleeing children. A scream pierced the air, and Max turned briefly to see a child smaller and frilier than the rest snatched back by a writhing mass of darkness. No! He roared, anger flooding through him. It ignited a fire he didn't know he possessed. Gathering every ounce of strength, he clutched the girl's hand tighter and charged back toward the child. A desperate act, fueled by instinct and the haunting realization that time was slipping away. The masked figure stilled, a grotesque smile creeping across its featureless face. Foolish, brave boy, it taunted, shadows swirling around it like a storm. You cannot save them. This is only the beginning. Max lunged forward, fighting against the shadows, fiercely determined to prove that love could pierce the darkness. He could feel the heat of the pulsing box behind him, and a deep part of him wondered what it would reveal if he dared to face it head-on. The girl quivered beside him, her wide eyes reflecting his own determination. Together, they pushed forward, stepping into the unknown. He could almost taste it, the power, the mystery, and the terrible truth that awaited them. Then, without warning, the floor shuddered beneath their feet, and the room erupted once more, a seismic wave of energy that threatened to consume everything. All at once, Max understood, they were running toward salvation or their final end, and the choice may not be theirs to make. What awaited them beyond that door? What horrors remained unspoken, lurking in the shadows they dared to confront? Every step echoed in his mind, a countdown to an inevitable collision with fate. The ground shook beneath Max's feet, throwing him off balance as a wave of pure force swept through the room. The screams intensified, morphing into shrill pitches that clawed at his sanity. He instinctively shielded the girl, pulling her tightly to him, the weight of the moment crashing down around them. Stay close. He shouted, but his voice felt lost in a tempest of terror. He glanced back at the retreating shadows. They pulsed and surged, eager to reclaim their lost prey. The sight made his heart race faster, time stretching and contracting like an elastic band about to snap. The child, the one who had been pulled away, now hovered at the edge of his mind, an anchor weighing him down. I have to save her, he thought, a desperate resolve surging within him. But as if sensing his intentions, the shadows coiled and thickened, curling around his legs like vipers. Max! Ms. Michelle's frantic voice pulled him back. We have to go. Now. She was near the door, her silhouette stark against the chaotic thrumming of the dim space. Just beyond, the hallway waited an uncertain escape beckoning for them all. He could see the girl trembling at his side, her wide-eyed innocence cutting through the darkness like a beacon. Please, her soft voice barely broke through the din. Don't leave her. He hesitated just a heartbeat longer, the decision ripped at him. I can't. He took a steadying breath, pushing against the waves of dark energy trying to pull him back. With one last glance at the swirling maelstrom, he turned and sprinted toward the door. The shadows shrieked, manifesting into more grotesque figures, their forms shifting with chaos. With every step, it became harder to breathe, as if the very air available was being consumed by the malevolence. But then, light broke through a flicker of hope. They burst into the hallway and stumbled to a halt. Proximity to freedom was intoxicating, yet the pulsating energy still drummed behind them, a seething reminder that the threat was not finished. Go! Max urged, pushing the girl forward. I'll follow. Ms. Michelle led the children, urgency fueling their pace, while Max peered back into the chaotic offices of nightmares. The masked figures were gathering speed, tearing into the hallway like a wave, gaining momentum. Fear lanced through him as he shouted, "Hurry!" His breath quickened, panic clawing at his throat as he caught glimpses of the shadows beginning to spill out of the room. The hallway stretched like a tunnel, a sense of doom creeping over him. The sounds behind him turned into a cacophony of rage and sorrow, voices screaming in twisted harmony. It tugged at the strings of his heart, mingling terror and dread in a toxic cocktail. They were right behind him. Could they sense his fear? Faster! He yelled, feeling the crush of inevitability closing in. But then, a strange calm washed over him as he recognized he was not running away. He was running toward something, a heart of courage that could defy this storm. The children stumbled into a dimly lit break room just ahead. They turned, eyes wide, breaths rapid as they beckoned him. Max dashed inside, the shadows almost licking at his heels. Just as he crossed the threshold, the pulse from the other room reverberated around them like a thunderclap. He slammed the door, heart pounding in his ears. But as he leaned back against the door, fear gripped his chest anew. It wouldn't hold them. He glanced at Ms. Michelle and the children, who were now gathered in the corner, trembling and wide-eyed. Silence descended as they collectively held their breath. Then a low hum began to echo, that noise of vibrating energy, unsettling and alive. The shadows gathered on the other side, united in their pursuit, ready to break through. Max turned to the group, desperation etched on his face. We need to fight. We can't let them take us. But deep down, questions burned in his mind. What power had they disturbed? What was within that box that drew all this horror forth? He felt the shadows pressing against the door, swirling and thrumming with promise and doom, a promise of suffering, a taste of unending darkness. As the door quivered beneath the weight of their wrath, the reality sunk in. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their very souls. What would it take to unleash the light that might save them? What strength lay dormant within their bond? With determination tightening his chest, he took a step forward, ready to face whatever came for them next. The door rattled violently, the shadows outside clamoring as if they were alive and hungry. Max's pulse quickened, the thrumming resonance vibrating through him. He could feel their hatred raw, unfiltered, like an animal ready to pounce. He turned to the group, who were now huddled together, eyes darting around, sensing the impending doom weighing on them like a blanket of nightmares. We need a plan," he exclaimed, his voice cracking under the pressure. "We can't just hide here. We need to find out what we're up against." Ms. Michelle, trembling yet fiercely protective, stared back at him. "What can we do?" There the words died on her lips as another thud echoed against the door, sending tremors through the frame. "Max, please." The girl's voice broke through the chaos. Her big brown eyes were pools of fear but also courage. "You promised you wouldn't let them take us." He knelt beside her, the resolve building inside him like a small fire in the dark. "I won't. But we need to be brave together." He glanced around the break room, searching for anything that could help defend against the oncoming tide of shadows. The refrigerator loomed in the corner, an ordinary object among the surreal terror surrounding them. "Is there anything we can use? Food? Bottles?" he asked, his mind racing. Ms. Michelle moved toward it, flinging it open. "There's a can of soda, a few snacks, but anything." Max shouted as the shadows screeched with fury outside, their presence encroaching upon the thin barrier that separated despair from salvation. Suddenly, an idea sparked in his mind, a memory of an old horror film flickering across a screen. It could work. "Get the can. We can use it to distract them." She reached for the soda, arms trembling as she handed it to him. Max snatched it, the cold metal a bizarre comfort in the growing heat of anxiety. "Okay, when I open this, we need to make every second count," he said, nodding at the door. "Ms. Michelle, you take the kids to that side exit, the one near the storage room, right?" "Yes. But no buts. It'll be safer if I draw them away. You all have to trust me." Tension hung heavy in the air, palpable. He finally nodded, and with that decision, something within him flickered to life, the storm inside battling against the darkness just outside. Max turned back, the cold can clutched tightly. He held his breath and turned the tab. It screeched like a banshee, a wild sound slicing through the heavy layers of despair. "Go now," he yelled, tossing the can into the hallway. It rolled, glinting in the dim light before it finally came to a stop, and then the sound of furious activity erupted. The angry shadows strained against the door, eager for a taste of the lives they longed to seize. That was when Max realized, they weren't just creatures of darkness. They were fueled by anger, by the very essence of despair. He shouted after the group. "Run! Now!" A horrible crack echoed as the door splintered, a jagged crack forming like the winding fissures of an earthquake. Max turned as more shadows poured in, merging and splitting like a fever dream. He could see terror wash over the children's faces, but they didn't look back. They bolted toward the light, their only hope. And then he felt it, a hand, cold and unyielding, grasping at his ankle, dragging him down. He stumbled, heart racing, horror bubbling over. "Max!" Ms. Michelle screamed from the other side of the opening, but he was losing his footing, sinking into this realm of nightmares as the shadows lunged toward him. "Go!" he roared, his voice echoing against the tumult, fueled by a fierce instinct to protect them. "Get to safety." There was no time for fear, the darkness engulfed him, clawing, twisting. All that existed was the oppressive weight around him and the chilling realization that he might be left behind. As the last glimmer of light faded, he closed his eyes, summoning the deeper part of himself that dared to fight back against the dark. What would it take to shatter this suffocating abyss? And as he felt the chilling grip tighten, he knew the battle for their souls was just beginning. Would their bond wield enough strength to pierce through the encroaching doom? The darkness pressed in around Max, heavy and suffocating, as if it were a living entity. The cold fingers tugging at his ankle felt alive, mercilessly pulling him deeper into an abyss that whispered promises of despair. He fought against it, clawing at the ground, but the shadows were relentless, consuming every shred of light and hope. "Max!" Ms. Michelle's voice rang out, filled with desperation. He could hear the children's cries, faint but piercing, echoing in his ears. They were gone. They slipped away, leaving him to fend for himself. The shadows surged around him, hungry for his fear, feeding off his sorrow. It was a harrowing realization, one that ignited a rage deep within him. No! He screamed, his voice a primal roar that split the encroaching silence. He grappled with the coldness at his feet, twisting free and forcing himself into a standing position. Adrenaline shot through him like fire. He had to get out of here, had to warn them, had to find a way back to the light where safety existed. With wild eyes, he glanced around the dark, dimly lit space. Strange, serpentine forms writhed in the blackness, their presence a thick, choking fog. But amid the shadows, he spotted a faint glow, just at the edge of his vision. It pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. Hope stirred within him. He willed his legs to move, pushing against the pull of the shadows, stumbling towards that flicker of light. With each step, the darkness shrank back, hissing indignantly. The horror surrounding him felt palpable. He could almost taste the bitterness of despair. As he edged closer, the glowing light materialized into an outline, a door, nothing more than a flimsy membrane against the raging dark. Yet it held the promise of safety, of his friends back in that break room. He reached for the handle, and with a fierce determination, he yanked it open. A rush of wind greeted him, invigorating and familiar. He stepped through only to be met with a freezing void. The world beyond was distorted and surreal, as if he had entered the painting of a nightmare. Echoes of laughter and cries mingled with the anguished wails of the shadows he'd left behind. Max! The voice was clearer now. It was Ms. Michelle, but it was distant, as if she were far away. Panic tightened his chest. The door behind him was already closing, the shadows screeching in agony, angrier than ever. He turned, running back, propelled by the sheer terror of losing them all. He could barely see now, the dim light fading quickly. What if he lost them entirely? His heart pounded in his ears. He reached for the door, but it slammed shut just as he approached it, sealing in the dark creatures that still clawed for him. At that moment, he felt the weight of defeat settle in. Fear seeped into his bones, threatening to crush him. Panic-stricken, he dropped to his knees, pleading into the swirling abyss. You can't take me. You can't take them. Just let us go. A chilling silence enveloped him, the shadows hesitating, as if contemplating his words. And then, one of the shadows stepped forward, revealing a face twisted in an expression of anguish, an echo of something human. What do you want? Max asked, his voice trembling, caught between terror and disbelief. The shadow seemed to waver, a moment of uncertainty flickering across its ethereal form. There was an answer there, something lingering just beyond his grasp. Despair, it hissed, the voice a cacophony of whispers blending into one. You bring it with you. It feeds us. Max's mind raced. The realization struck him, a shard of clarity cutting through the haze of fear. If despair fed them, then maybe hope could fracture the darkness. Gathering all his strength, he scanned for a glimmer of faith within himself. It was minuscule, a faint spark, but it was there. He could build on it, channel it. I believe in them. I believe in their strength and mine, he declared, letting conviction roll off his tongue. As he spoke, he envisioned the children's faces, their laughter, and the enduring light of hope that shone within them. Fresh shadows coiled around him, shuddering, recoiling from his words. And then came the question, a whisper laced with frustration and confusion. What happens now? Max took a deep breath. Now, we find our way back together. The shadows shifted, uncertainty bleeding into their forms. They weren't just monsters. Would they respond to hope as fiercely as they had to despair? What would it cost to bridge the abyss that separated them? Max felt the air thicken as the shadows recoiled, their forms wavering like smoke caught in an unseen wind. A tense silence enveloped him. He could feel their collective gaze fixated on him, weighing his words. Hope pulsed within him, an ember trying to ignite a fire. Tell me what you want, he urged, trying to bridge the gap between despair and salvation. The shadow seemed to shift, contemplating his question. "You do not belong here," it hissed, voice laced with pain and sorrow. It stepped closer, revealing more of its twisted visage, hollow eyes, a mouth rimmed with jagged edges, yet somehow recognizable. It was mimicking a human form, its anguish palpable and undeniable. Max took a step back, heart racing. "You're trapped like me," he realized, the words bursting forth like a revelation. "You're feeding off despair, but you don't have to. You can change." A ripple of unease coursed through the shadow. It flickered, a brief moment of hesitation glimmering within its depths. "Change is not ours to claim," it spat, but doubt dripped from its voice. "Why not? What if we could help each other? What if you could become something more?" Max pressed on, his heart pounding. The shadows surrounding him swayed as if they were listening intently, caught between the gnawing desire for despair and the flickering light of his hope, but then the darkness surged, anger flaring as another voice rang out. "Hope cannot exist without despair. You cannot simply erase what has been." It echoed with a chorus of hisses and screams that crushed his convictions. "No. You're wrong," he shouted, fire igniting in his veins. "Hope can exist. I've seen it. I've felt it." In an intense burst of resolve, he clutched the memory of his friends, their laughter, their kindness, their belief in him. "Everyone deserves a chance. I'll fight for you, too. Just show me where to start." The shadow paused, recoil turning to contemplation. "These souls, they starve in the light. They have forgotten how to hope," it whispered, surrendering just a fraction. Its anguished face twisted in pain, exposing the depth of its own suffering. "Then let us remind them," Max exclaimed, seizing the opportunity. "Together, let us show them there's a way back. You're not just horror, you can guide them from this darkness." The shadows pulsed with newfound energy, hesitance battling within. "But you risk the light may consume you, too." Max shook his head, resolve cementing. Better to burn with hope than live in the shadows of despair. With an erratic spasm, the shadow inched forward, reaching out with a trembling hand, a desperate embodiment of possibility. It hovered before Max, trembling as if caught between worlds. "What will you give for you to succeed?" Another shadow taunted, darkness curling around him, its grip as cloying as it was fierce. "Everything," Max shouted, feeling the weight of their desperation pressing down on him. In that moment, he knew he couldn't turn back. He was all in, but little did he realize how much he would have to lose. The shadows were gaining confidence, their forms tightening around him like a dark cocoon as whispers surrounded him, hopes and fears intertwined in an unsettling serenade. With his heart pounding, Max felt the tides turning. Would he find the strength needed to reshape even the very nature of despair? And if he did, what remnants of his own light would remain? The shadows loomed closer, and beneath their breath, he could hear the faintest echo, "Dare to dream but beware of the cost." As the darkness enveloped him, Max braced for the next wave of challenges. The journey home was just beginning, and he had no idea what awaited him in the heart of the abyss. Would hope be enough to navigate through the vast unknown? Or would it all come crashing down? The shadows tightened around Max, an oppressive chorus whispering in his ears. "You must embrace despair, boy." The words flowed like a cold current, wrapping around him, pulling him deeper into the void. Yet, amidst that darkness, something sparked inside him, a flame born from love and resilience. "I want to let you take me," he shouted, clutching the memory of the children's faces. That small girl with the big brown eyes, Ms. Michelle's fierce determination. They kept pushing him forward, reminding him of the light they held within. Rather than resisting the shadows entirely, he focused on channeling his hope into their depths. "You hunger for despair, feed instead on the belief that we can overcome." His voice rang out like a trumpet in the stillness. For a moment, the shadows huddled in confusion, shifting, swirling tentatively. Max could sense the hesitance in them, much like his own struggle against the tide of darkness. Deep within, he felt a stabilization, a connection sparking between them. The pulsating glow took on a new rhythm, resonating with his heartbeat. "You threaten the very essence of what we are." A voice screeched, a swirling mass slashing through the air. "You dare to redefine our purpose? Purpose and presence can change." Max countered. "You don't have to live as fear. You can rise from despair. Don't you want to feel joy? Laughter? Love?" His voice melded with his unyielding spirit, a lifeline thrown into the storm. The shadows moaned, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. In a perpetual battle of wills, they quivered, wavering like smoke in the wind. "Hope burns brightly. But will it last?" One shadow taunted, dissonance lacing its voice. Conflicting emotions radiated all around. They were angry and confused, yet something about Max's conviction forced them to reconsider. With renewed strength, he pressed on. "Your own pain can be a beacon for others. You can guide them out of this darkness if you choose to transform. I'm not asking for your destruction, but for your redemption. Together, we can return light to those you've consumed." The air crackled with energy as the shadows hesitated, their movements faltering, exchanging uncertain glances, as if for the first time they were grasping the possibility of change. In the deep recesses of despair, the spirit of hope resonated fiercely, igniting flickers of understanding among the darkness. Yes, hope, it echoed, that palpable fear that had wrapped around Max loosening ever so slightly. "But what price do you pay? What will you sacrifice to shatter this cycle?" Lightness filled the air, an odd contrast to their ephemeral forms. "I'll offer my own fears," Max replied, conviction surging within him. "I'll step into the light and face what I dread if it means freeing others." The shadows stirred, swirling with renewed purpose, and then a powerful voice erupted from their depths, a harmony composed of fright and reluctance. "Very well. But beware, boy, for the light, it reveals all." Suddenly, the room trembled with energy, shadows dancing like flames, and Max braced himself, heart pounding with exhilaration and dread. Decisions had been made, threads of connection grew between them, binding him to those lost within despair. Then, a rift rippled open, light spilling forth like a waterfall from the darkness. "Go!" A shadow commanded, now transformed, a guiding force. "Lead them." Max surged toward it, feeling the pulse of hope guiding him, propelling him to the break room where he had last seen Ms. Michelle and the children. With each step, he could feel the shadows cheering him on. They weren't just creatures of fear anymore, they had the potential for change, warmth amid the unforgiving void that he burst into the break room where the walls shuddered and shadows were slowly withdrawing, the atmosphere crisp with possibility. There stood Ms. Michelle, eyes wide, relief washing over her. "Max, you're back!" she cried, the children clinging to her sides, their little faces terrified yet hopeful at the sight of him. Max wasted no time. "We have to go, now. But we won't go alone." He gestured behind him, the shadows shimmering at the edge of the light. "They're with us, they want to help." Confusion flickered across Ms. Michelle's eyes, alongside a glimmer of newfound hope. She hesitated, then looked at the children, all of them grasping hands, feeling the warmth of human connection. Finally, she nodded. "All right, let us go. But stay close." With a rush of adrenaline, they hurried toward the exit, the shadows swirling behind them, no longer a harbinger of doom but an unexpected ally. At that threshold, a blinding light overcame the darkened corners of the room, illuminating everything in its embrace. As the group fled, they felt warmth wrapping around them, the shadows transforming into gentle guides rather than malevolent forces. Max led the way, his heart racing with exhilaration, joy pouring through him. Together, they powered through the doorway and into the world beyond, the sanctuary of safety looming ahead. In the end, they emerged from the daycare, laughter erupting from the children like an anthem of hope. The shadows followed, no longer menacing but fluttering like leaves in the breeze, symbols of rebirth and potential. Max caught Ms. Michelle's eye, both of them understanding the gravity of the moment that had shaped them all. "I can't believe we made it," Max breathed, the weight of what they had just faced settling softly upon him. The dawning sun painted the sky in hues of gold, reminders of new beginnings, of lessons learned, of strength found in the darkest times. "But what now?" Ms. Michelle asked, glancing back at the shadows now merely wisps dancing in the light. "What do we do with them?" Max smiled. "We show them the way. We share our hope, our light. This world needs both despair and hope to thrive, they are intertwined. Who knows, they could teach us too." He watched as the shadows swirled around them, realigning themselves into fluctuating forms, surrounded by the ever-present warmth of their determination, and in that moment, beneath the brilliant sun, with laughter dancing on the wind, Max realized this wasn't just a fight, it was a journey toward understanding. They had defeated something far worse than the shadows. They had conquered isolation, despair, and the fear of the unknown. Moving forward wouldn't be easy, nor would it be free of struggles. But together, they would face it all armed with strength, fueled by hope and forever intertwined between light and dark. In this new dawn, they would build a future where both despair and hope coexisted, and Max, Ms. Michelle, and the children took their first steps into that new world, filled with endless possibilities. Before stepping into this new reality, remember, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will enthrall your imagination. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others discover this journey. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this breathtaking conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful ending. Your support is crucial. Only true fans understand the importance of these actions.